This is a not pump action. This does not move. Lever action blaster. $199. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing awesome out there. Today we are reviewing the SLAB by Sillybutts, and this is a pretty unique design and a pretty unique blaster that I am showing off. Something very different than other things I've shown on the channel here recently, but it is another 3D printed design from a member of the community, so that is really awesome, and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. So stay tuned. Okay, you guys, so the SLAB by Sillybutts, this is the V4, and I think it's the latest version, but I do think he's probably made a few tweaks since I built this thing back in probably October or November of last year. So this is almost a year old at this point, and I know a lot of people have done reviews on it because I was kind of out of the game, but I still thought I would share my thoughts on the blaster, which I think are maybe slightly different than what I remember some of the reviews being back in the day on this thing. Back in the day being like less than a year ago, so that's really probably not back in the day, but nevertheless, it's a long time in the YouTube realm, but hopefully this is still relevant to you guys, and I still think this is a really cool blaster. It is a blaster that I thought was very unique, and if you're not familiar with this blaster, this is a not pump action. This does not move. Lever action blaster. So pretty sweet. Reminds me a lot of the Busby, what was it? The Busby Slingfire? Slingfire, I'm pretty sure I'm right on that name. It's been a long time since that blaster has been used in my, at least in my arsenal. That was a blaster we used a lot back at the beginning of the Naptown Nerf Club as loaners, because it was one of the best blasters you could get for cheap and performance-wise without doing really too much modification to it. But yeah, this is like that on steroids. It's an awesome lever action blaster and pretty unique design. So we'll go over the features here before we get on with all the pros and cons and whatnot with the blaster. But this is obviously a fully 3D printed blaster. You can buy the hardware kit and build it yourself, or you can get this pre-built, I believe, by Silver Fox. I'm not sure if Outer Darts pre-builds these also. I think he does. So both of those guys, I think, build this. I'll put links to the description box to all that. I know Silver Fox does some beautiful ones. I've seen some of his. He always does great work. So does Luke, obviously. but yeah, those are two guys I definitely recommend for that. But this blaster has a Picatinny rail on top. He even has sights that you can print or purchase depending on how you're doing your order. But they use fiber optics, but I actually made this work with 3D printed filament. I think I had to modify it slightly to do that. It has a rifled scar that that Silly designed for this blaster. That's pretty cool. This thing comes off just like that. Has an O-ring to kind of hold it on there, and so that's pretty sweet. We'll go ahead and remove that for now. We have a front foregrip that he has quite a few different versions for. I like this one, that smooth one with the back on it, but there's quite a few different versions of this. You can also opt for no Picatinny rail on top. There's a lot of different things you can choose from when you purchase or build this blaster. I also opted for sling points on the front here and back here on the stock, so we have two sling points. I'm not sure I would ever use them, especially this front one, but they're there. But slinging your blaster, especially with a 3D print, can be a little risky and could possibly break, even though I used really high infill and layer thickness on that. Moving on to the magwell, there is a thumb release right here. You can pull out your magwell, insert your magwell. This is a half dart only blaster, which is also a theme recently on my channel. I've pretty much moved to just half length dart blasters. Just simplifies my loadout when I take it to wars, especially with springers. I really don't see a use for long darts anymore. That's kind of been the way the hobby's been for quite some time, and I'm really glad that we have a lot of half-length dart blasters now, so it's been really nice to be able to use just half-length darts at wars the last several years. So obviously we have our priming handle lever here that you use the back of your hand to prime and pull back. I actually find this very comfortable for a lever. It is a very light prime considering how much power we're getting out of this blaster, so that is really nice. And I don't have a problem with this on the back of my hand. I haven't really felt like I needed to put any padding or anything here, but if you have delicate hands like Coop 772, you can put some foam there, or something else to kind of protect your hand. I've seen people do that and it does look kind of cool, so that is definitely an option. Trigger is right here, and the one thing I will state, because we're going to fire this blaster right now, the seal could be better, and we'll get into more of that later, but I don't know if that's just my version, but the seal definitely could be better. But we'll go ahead and test the seal here. So that is a little bit of an issue, or probably the biggest issue for sure, in my opinion, with this blaster. And yeah, we'll get into more of that later, but that seal is not great. Grip is actually really comfortable for this blaster, in my opinion. I really like the way it sits in my shoulder here with the stock, and then just the way it's a different, obviously, grip than most blasters because it's a lever action rifle, but it is very comfortable for me, and I have no issues with the grip at all. Stock is nicely curved, fits in my shoulder very nicely. I went with the textured one, or whatever you want to call this. There's also a smooth version if you want a smooth one, so that's an option too. But I like a little texture there for grip purposes, so it wouldn't slip off. But this is curved perfectly to fit in your shoulder, and I think that's great. The blaster is also designed well, so you actually can use the sights on top when it's fit into your shoulder, so that's also really, really cool. One thing you may have noticed, or you might know already, this blaster is very unique because when you prime it, you notice the barrel moving forward. This whole section, the magwell and the barrel, all moves forward and then pulls back. The pusher does not move. It's stationary, and then that's how it loads the dart in. So that's pretty darn cool that he designed it that way. Very different. So I give him props for that, doing something kind of out of the box, out of the norm. Even though this blaster is very unique in the way it's functioning, it uses a lot of things that you saw in the links, including how it uses a turnaround to fire a dart. The air goes through here, up through here, and then pushes the dart or out through the barrel. So just like the Lynx does, it also uses some hardware and things from the Caliburn or from Slug's designs with the elastic bands, and the screws and hardware are very similar to what you would see in a Caliburn or one of Slug's blasters. But that is very cool how he used things from other people to get inspiration for, I believe, his first major blaster he did, and then he also did some things that were completely unique. So pretty awesome there. This does have a K25 spring in it, I do believe is what was sent with this blaster. Like I said before, very light prime considering the power you're getting out of this blaster, so this thing packs a punch. Went ahead and threw the scar barrel back on there. Like I said, this is a K25 spring, but you can also order this blaster with lesser powered springs. I don't think he recommends you going too much over this though, and I would recommend that as well, because this blaster does seem a little more fragile to me than most of my blasters. I actually was testing this thing out before doing the review today, and I dry fired it once and the magwell fell completely out because this section right here where it holds on to the turnaround just broke clean off. Now, I'm not blaming him for the design on that. That is a kind of a weak point though, in my opinion. I probably should have printed this turnaround in 100% infill. I think it was more like 30. And yeah, that was unfortunate, but I was able to glue it back on. Oh, well, that's a problem. Dry fired and broke it. One dry fire, broke it. So that was definitely unfortunate that that happened to me. I think it was the first time I've actually dry fired this blaster, because one of the cool things about this blaster is, we'll go ahead and insert a magazine here. It's really easy to see where your darts are and if you're out before you fire. But when I was doing the firing demo, I was trying to make sure I was keeping the blaster level and making sure all the shots were as consistent as possible to judge range of this blaster, and I didn't realize I was out of darts. The ugly, in my opinion, about this blaster, it's super inconsistent. It doesn't have a great seal. There's not a great way to fix the seal, because when you put this thing together, you have to glue your plunger tube on to your turnaround. And the best way to do that is super glue. You could use hot glue, but that's gonna not hold up over time, and also is a very thick glue, so it's gonna be messy. I feel like it would be hard to do a good job with hot glue and also keep it attached. So I use super glue, which is what he recommends, and that keeps you from being able to get inside this and re-lubricate everything. You can pull it apart, which is also complicated. I was trying to lube this up fresh for you guys and to make sure I could get the seal as best as possible, but taking this thing apart to get to your spring, I think you have to basically remove everything off the front here, including the trigger linkage, which is something that you have to dial in pretty precisely to have a consistent trigger pull. I know some people have complained about issues of that loosening up over time or just during normal firing. I haven't had a problem with that yet, so that's good, but that is another thing that can loosen up and is a little tricky to get, right. But I do think you have to remove all that stuff from the front of the blaster to get to the spring. So it's not an easy spring swap or maintenance to this blaster from what I can see, and there's really no way you can lubricate the O-ring that is right here on the turnaround. I re-lubricated the O-rings on the pusher, so that helped some, but it's still like the seal is just very inconsistent. The other thing that I've noticed with mine is, we'll prime it here, there's just a lot of play because of the way this is designed. There's not a lot, but there's some play and some wiggle right there that I also think kind of hinders the seal a little bit. I also think I may have some hairline cracks in my plunger tube, which I'm not sure if that's what those are or if it's something else. So these may all be problems with my model. So I'm not saying that this is an overall problem, but if I've had these problems, my guess is other people have too. And I kind of want to do this review as a PSA to what I've had problems with, and to find out what other people have had problems if they've had similar problems. So let me know what issues or how you like your slab down in the description box. I would love to hear. Maybe I'll learn something too. So when I put this thing over the chronograph, I was getting very inconsistent performance, where I would get shots that were like 160, and then I'll have shots that shoot closer to 200, which is kind of crazy, because I think when I was first shooting this, it was around 185 or so. So I was surprised to see some that were 200. That might have been a misread, but we'll go ahead and put it over the chronograph again today and see what it's doing. But when I used this at a war and when I've shot it on the range the other day, shots were 30 feet apart from the lowest to the furthest. So that's a really big difference to me. It's one of the, probably the most important thing to me when I'm using a blaster, is that it's consistent, because when you're trying to aim at your target, you need to know the range of your blaster, and when that range is inconsistent, it's hard to hit your target. Let's stop talking about that and go ahead and put it over the chronograph and see what kind of performance we're getting today. All right, so we'll go ahead and put some shots over the chronograph just to see how this thing is performing today, but hopefully you'll understand what I mean by inconsistent here. 170. 199, 172, 177, 192, and there we go. Yellow jacket, get away. Get away. The yellow jackets are killing me, you guys. All right, hopefully he's gone now and we can keep going. They don't like the blasters, I don't think. 179, 189, 191, 167, 181, 174, 181, 187, 166, 182. So yeah, you can see that is fairly inconsistent. You know, obviously that could have to do with something going on with my model. So like I said, take that with a grain of salt, but this has been an issue for me pretty much since day one, since building this blaster. And that's the thing, is once you glue this on, you can't really go back and fix anything. And that's the thing just bothers me with this design, because even with any Springer, you're gonna have to go back and re-lubricate things. You're gonna have to fix the seals, and over time, that's just part of it. And you can't get to that O-ring anymore. I can't do that now. I can do the plunger tube if I want to take the whole thing apart, which is not easy. I can do the O-rings on in the turnaround if I need to replace those, or do the pusher O-rings. I can do that, but I cannot get to this O-ring or fix anything with the way the plunger tube sits on this turnaround. So I do think that that is the part of the blaster I would like to see improved upon. All right, so we'll go ahead and put some shots on the range, and we'll kind of see how consistent or inconsistent this blaster really is. That was a decent shot. That one's also pretty good. 3 good ones so far. So those were solid. That one is even better, actually. That one was shorter. So every now and then you get a short one. That one was also short. Not quite as short as the one before it, but that one was better. Short. Very short. Kind of in between. Short. Short again. Short. And short. So I think a little more consistent than the first time I was shooting this blaster, but still ranges I feel like could be better. But let's go ahead and check them out. All right, let's go see how we did there. I mean, this blaster does shoot pretty far, you guys. It is a solid blaster. It's just a little more inconsistent than I'd like, but I thought that was better than when I shot it earlier a few days ago. So that's good. But there's the shortest one, and I would say that's probably, I don't know, it's probably 85 feet, maybe 90, something like that. It is downhill a little bit. You know, like I say, everything's relative, but we don't really have a breeze today, so that's helpful. But here are some of the darts. So that's the one I'm standing at. And then we got some more up here. So a lot of them in basically what, a 10-foot range here? Like, yeah. So that's, a lot of them are in that like 10-foot range, maybe even less than 10 feet. But then we have some outliers up here. These are actually better shots, in my opinion. And these are more where I want to be at with the blaster, and you know, which is up here, which is definitely probably more like 100 feet or more. So those were definitely more consistent this time. I mean, it's only 15 shots than they were when I shot them the other day. So maybe lubricating a couple O-rings helped out a little bit, but it's really hard to do a complete overhaul on this blaster in terms of fixing the seal. I mean, obviously if my plunger tube actually is cracked, it's really hard for me to tell that without getting it apart, but if it is cracked, that could also affect it too, obviously. So the other problem I will state that I've had once when I use this at a war is my barrel actually came loose. There's only one thing that holds the barrel on besides the O-rings. And I thought that was a little strange, but I do think it has to do with the barrel moving and not the pusher moving, that it's more likely, obviously, to come loose. So that is another thing that I find a little problematic. I think overall, though, the blaster is really sweet, and I want to love it so much, and I want to use it more. So if I can just figure out how to get it more consistent and make sure that barrel doesn't fall out, I will love this thing, because I do want to use it at wars more often. Hopefully, maybe you guys can give me some help there. I think, obviously, I just need to maybe buy a new plunger tube and redo that turnaround, and then maybe things will work a little bit better. But I still want to be able to get in there to re-lubricate things in the future, and so I just wish we could maybe figure out a better way to attach that plunger tube to the turnaround. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I know it's kind of an awkward review in terms of, you know, the blaster I was reviewing, because there was some issues with the blaster. I almost didn't do the review because that mag well broke, but I'm going to be completely transparent, and I think it's just fun to show things off that aren't 100% perfect. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and maybe I'll do a short video sometime if I do get this problem fixed and share that with you guys. But we have some other reviews coming up, I think, that are going to be really awesome, newer releases, so definitely stay tuned for that. Don't forget to hit that like button, you guys. It greatly helps out the channel, really helps out that YouTube algorithm. Make sure your notifications are on so you know when I post a video, which we're still doing good. Still Sundays at 10, you guys, but we'll see. I might have to take a week off here and there just for my sanity, but nevertheless, we're sticking with it so far, so that's good. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Peace out.